The outcome of the escalating tension between the US and North Korea will depend on what their two notoriously erratic leaders, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, opt to do. But there certainly are more factors and variables in determining the future course of events, among which China should top the list. The fact that Trump held a telephone conversation with President Xi Jinping over the weekend despite the lack of a breakthrough is evidence that China has a key role to play in diffusing the tension. As the sole remaining Cold War ally of the Communist North, China holds unparalleled influence over Pyongyang. China is the North's largest trading partner and benefactor, which means the North cannot survive without the supply of oil and other necessities from its neighbor. China, which fought alongside North Korea in the Korean War, also wants to use its alliance with North Korea as leverage in dealing with the US as the two superpowers battle for hegemony in the region and beyond. Against such a backdrop, the Beijing government used to stand in the way of the UN imposing sanctions against the North's nuclear and missile provocations. Even when it had given consent to a sanctions resolution, China did not do all that it could do to plug loopholes, such as illegal border trade with the North. As tension grows over the North's tests of intercontinental ballistic missiles and the US hardline stance against the country, China is seen bolstering its image as the main patron of the North Korean regime. Chinese President Xi Jinping called the alliance with North Korea one formed by blood during the Korean War. As the US and North Korea were openly trading threats of a preemptive strike, Xi employed a slogan praising the Chinese People's Army's participation in support of the North and victory in the anti-US war. That certainly is a veiled warning that Beijing will do the same in the event of another war on the Korean peninsula. Nevertheless, under pressure from the US, which had publicly talked about trade retaliation against Beijing, China gave a yes vote to the UN's latest resolution against North Korea. That, however, should be the start, not the end, of what China can do to defuse the escalating crisis. Basically, China does not want a radical change in the geopolitical situation of the region. The state-run Global Times made it clear in a recent editorial, saying that China does not want to change the status quo of the areas where China's interests are concerned. In that case, it needs to do something on its own. First and foremost, China should persuade or pressure North Korea to stop escalating tension. What's important is to make sure that North does not test more nuclear devices or missiles. Also urgent is to keep Pyongyang, which has threatened to fire ballistic missiles into the waters around Guam, from carrying out such a provocative act. In relation to the matter, China gave an appropriate warning. The same Global Times editorial said China should make it clear that if North Korea launches missiles that threaten US soil, and the US retaliate, China would stay neutral. In other words, if the North initiates a war, it should deal with the consequences on its own. There is no doubt that a war between the US and North Korea will result in the fall of the communist regime and a pro-America unified Korea at China's doorstep. This alone is good reason for China to dissuade North Korea from starting a war against the US. China would not be happy either. If a nuclearized North Korea prompts South Korea and Japan to bring US tactical nuclear weapons or seek their own armament to counter threats from the North. A nuclear-free North Korea serves Beijing's interests. All in all, China has more to gain than lose by reigning in North Korea. It should take actions to use its influence on Pyongyang to defuse the current crisis and eventually seek a resolution of the North Korea problems. First steps could include sending a special envoy to Kim Jong-un and taking the initiative to reopen the six-party talks. Page 2. Ivanka Trump denounces white supremacy, neo-Nazis after Charlottesville. The Korea Herald. Greater than opinion, greater than editorial. The outcome of the escalating tension between the US and North Korea will depend on what their two notoriously erratic leaders, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, opt to do. But there certainly are more factors and variables in determining the future course of events, among which China show. Updated 13 August 2017, 17:29. All the latest developments show that the confrontation between the US and North Korea is raising tension to the highest level in recent years. US President Donald Trump and other government leaders in Washington are openly talking about a war with the North, which in turn is inciting the updated 11th of August 2017, 17:24. Tension on the Korean peninsula is escalating sharply, with Washington and Pyongyang getting on each other's nerves with blunt threats and warnings. The U.S. intelligence community assessed that North Korea has successfully produced a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can fit inside its INT. Updated 10 August 2017 18:01. There are several factors to be considered about the trial of Lee Jae-yong, the de facto leader of Samsung Group, who has been charged with bribery and other suspicions stemming from a corruption scandal involving ousted President Park Geun-hye. Firstly, there is the concern that the trial. Updated 9 August 2017 17:49. The government imposed an emergency power cutback on some companies twice last month, even as it was publicizing that the electricity supply was more than enough. According to a report that Korea Power Exchange submitted to Rep. Kim Woo-sung of the minor opposition Bareun Party, about 450 c. Updated 8 August 2017 17:42. North Korea should take the latest series of sanctions as a clear warning the international community will not condone its nuclear and missile provocations. The past week has seen actions taken to impose the most extensive yet sanctions on the North Korean regime, which test-fired last Mon. Updated 7 August 2017 17:49. Students at colleges of education are protesting a government plan to sharply reduce the recruitment of elementary school teachers next year. Last year, the government passed 846 of those who took certification tests to work at elementary schools in Seoul. This year, it plans to reduce th. Updated 6 August 2017 17:35. A recently unveiled bill on tax code revision targeting only the rich is hasty and politically expedient. The revenue increase from raising tax rates for the top 93,000 earners and 129 highest earning companies is estimated to be some $5.5 trillion $4.88 billion a year, or 24 trillion. Updated 4 August 2017 17:56. Historical and territorial disputes between Korea and Japan are never easy to settle. To be fair, it may be impossible for the two countries to reach a compromise on some of the knottiest issues. The Japanese Army's exploitation of Korean women and girls as sex slaves during World War II. Updated 3 August 2017 17:55. The US is talking tough after North Korea's recent launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile, which can strike part of its mainland. US President Donald Trump told his cabinet on Monday his administration will handle Pyongyang, stressing that the US can deal with anything. US Med. Updated 2 August 2017 17:45. The way past and incumbent governments alike have dealt with the deployment of a US missile shield system to counter threats from North Korea shows how foolhardy and senseless the leaders of this country are. The Moon Jae-in administration's decision last week to deploy 4 additional in. Updated 1 August 2017 17:42. North Korea's launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile on July 28 is misguided behavior which will only cause tighter sanctions and backfire on its goals. The reasons for the North to keep developing ICBMs are obvious. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un thinks he can make Washington HES. Updated 31 July 2017 17:35. The way the government is determining the fate of 2 nuclear reactors whose construction has been halted temporarily is as problematic as its policy to reduce the nation's dependence on nuclear power. The government and a panel tasked with considering the issue have been ping-ponging over. Updated 30 July 2017 17:49. Granted, it is hard to separate politicians from populism. Nevertheless, what Korean politicians from President Moon Jae-in to opposition leaders do these days offers ample cause for concern. The Moon administration and ruling party taking advantage of or aiming to further bolster. Updated 28 July 2017 17:55. The income-old growth policy outlined by the Moon Jae-in administration is quite different from former economic paradigms. The previous governments stressed large companies and exports to grow the economy, create jobs and increase household income. On the other hand, the Moon government CA. Updated 27 July 2017 17:25.